Hey guys, welcome back. YouTube's been hiding my videos lately, so a quick like and a short comment would mean a lot. Thanks. And now, let's dive into today's story. My name is Ethan Miller. I'm 41 years old, an IT consultant who spends more nights in airport lounges than I care to count. I've walked through the glass terminals of Atlanta Hartsfield so many times the gate agents smile like I'm family. For years, I believed I was building something meaningful, a career, a future, and a life with the woman I loved. But let me ask you this before I go further. Have you ever been so certain about someone, so convinced you knew every corner of their soul, only to discover you were just a guest in their story? That's the kind of realization that doesn't hit like thunder. It creeps in quietly, and by the time you understand it, the ground beneath you has already shifted. I thought I knew Claire. She was my wife, my anchor, the person who'd wave from the porch of our home on Queens Road West whenever I came back from a trip. To anyone watching, we looked like the picture of stability. Dinners at Rooster's Uptown, weekends strolling around Freedom Park with our dog, Rocky. People used to tell us, "You two are perfect together." And I believed them, because I wanted to believe them. The truth, though, is that I wasn't the only man Claire was smiling for. I wasn't the only home she was returning to. While I was in hotel conference rooms and co-working spaces, mapping out digital strategies for companies in Chicago or Dallas, she was mapping out a double life. It's strange, when betrayal comes, it doesn't arrive with trumpets. It arrives in small, quiet moments. A laugh that doesn't quite reach her eyes. A trip to Atlanta for work that feels just a little too frequent. A phone call that ends the second you walk into the room. At first, you brush it off. You tell yourself you're tired, overthinking, maybe even paranoid. But little by little, those details form a shadow, and eventually, the shadow swallows the light. I still remember the night I first admitted to myself something was wrong. I'd just flown home from a client meeting in Boston, landed late, and grabbed a takeout box from 131 Main on East Boulevard. When I walked into the house, it was quiet. Too quiet. Claire had said she'd be working late, catching up on a project. Her car was in the driveway, but the house felt empty, like someone had taken all the air out of it. That's when the doubt settled in. Not loud, not obvious, just a thin crack in the glass. And once a crack appears, you can't unsee it. You start pressing on it, testing it, wondering how deep it runs. For years, I believed in forever. I thought loyalty was as natural as breathing. I thought home was the place where two people keep their promises. But what I discovered is that sometimes the person you trust most is also the one quietly dismantling your life, piece by piece, while you're too blind, or too hopeful, to notice. And that's where my story begins. With the realization that the life I thought I'd built was nothing more than a facade. A house with two doors, one for me, and one for someone else. If you had seen us back then, you'd have thought we were living a love story. 5 years of marriage, and people still called us the golden couple of our circle. We didn't fight in public. We didn't roll our eyes at each other the way some of our friends did when the night ran long. No, Claire and I looked effortless. And in truth, I believed it. I thought we'd beaten the odds. We had the kind of home you'd see in a real estate magazine. A 2-story colonial brick house near Myers Park in Charlotte, tree-lined streets that glowed golden in the fall, neighbors who waved every morning as I pulled out of the driveway. Inside, it smelled of fresh paint and coffee. Claire had chosen every detail with care. The pale blue curtains in the living room, the oak dining table she insisted on, the gallery wall of photos from trips we'd taken, New Orleans, Charleston, the Outer Banks. Each frame was a promise, a snapshot of a life unfolding exactly as it should. Weekends had their own rhythm. Saturday mornings meant bagels at Owen's on East Boulevard, where the same waitress always asked about Rocky, our golden retriever. Claire loved to spoil him, laughing when he jumped into the back seat with his ears flying in the wind. Sundays were slower, long walks through Freedom Park, stopping at not just coffee for lattes before sitting by the pond. Sometimes we'd talk about the future. Kids, mostly. A boy and a girl, she said, like she was ordering from a menu. She already had names picked out, and I listened, smiling, because I thought those dreams were ours. My job kept me on the road, but Claire found ways to bridge the distance. She'd slip notes into my suitcase. "Come home safe, Ethan. I miss you already." I'd find them in sterile hotel rooms in Boston or Chicago, and for a moment, it felt like she was right there with me. Other times, she'd surprise me by showing up at my office downtown with takeout from Luce, her favorite Italian place. She knew I'd forget to eat when I was buried in projects, and she'd sit on the edge of my desk, swinging her legs while we shared pasta out of a paper box. Those are the moments that convinced me we had something real. Rocky became our practice run for parenthood, at least that's what we joked. She spoiled him with treats, bought him a plaid collar for Christmas, and insisted he sleep at the foot of our bed even when I said he took up too much room. Watching her with him, I could already imagine her as a mother, patient, loving, endlessly present. And I thought, if this is what marriage is, then I got lucky. Our friends fed into that image too. At dinner parties, they'd smile and say, "You two are perfect together." I remember one night at the Fig Tree, sitting by the window with glasses of wine, Claire leaning her chin on her hand, laughing at something I'd said. A friend snapped a photo, and later, when I saw it posted online, it looked like an ad for happiness. Her smile, my hand over hers, the candlelight, it was picture perfect. And maybe that's what blinded me. When life looks perfect from the outside, you stop checking the foundation. You stop asking questions. I thought the stability we had was unshakable, that love was enough to hold everything together. But what I didn't know, couldn't know then, was that beneath that glossy surface, the cracks had already started to spread. They were just too fine, too hidden for me to see. Suspicion doesn't crash into your life like a storm. It seeps in like water through a crack in the ceiling, slow, almost invisible at first, until you realize the plaster above you is soft and crumbling. For Claire and me, it started with small things, moments so ordinary they almost passed unnoticed. Almost. She was always traveling. That was normal. I was too. I'd be sitting in a hotel lobby in Dallas, polishing slides for a client pitch, while she was supposedly in Atlanta at a pharmaceutical summit. We'd FaceTime late at night, our screens glowing in different cities. At first, those calls were comforting, two people keeping their promise to stay close despite the miles. But then one night, something shifted. She said she was in Denver, tired from back-to-back meetings. The lamp behind her looked generic enough, but out the hotel window I could see tall, jagged towers lit against the night. Denver doesn't have that skyline. New York does. I didn't say anything. I wanted to. Instead, I laughed, asked how the conference was going, and told myself maybe my eyes were playing tricks. You don't want to accuse someone you love over a city skyline. The next hint came weeks later. She returned from another Atlanta trip, suitcase rolling behind her, perfume trailing in the air. I helped her unpack, a small ritual we had. She'd toss laundry my way. I'd fold things absent-mindedly while we caught up. That's when I found it. A folded restaurant receipt wedged between blouses. Canoe, on the Chattahoochee River. 2 entrees, a bottle of Chardonnay. Claire had told me she'd eaten alone that night, exhausted from meetings, room service too dull to bear. But the numbers told a different story. I stood there in the kitchen, Rocky padding around my feet, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. A simple slip of paper shouldn't mean anything, but I couldn't shake the weight of it. I tucked it back where I'd found it, like hiding the truth would make it disappear. Then came the silences. Hours at a time when her phone was off. Calls going straight to voicemail. Texts left hanging. Later she'd explain, the battery had died. Meetings had dragged on. Hotel Wi-Fi had been unreliable. All perfectly reasonable. All perfectly rehearsed. But when explanations pile up too neatly, they stop sounding like explanations. They start sounding like alibis. I tried to convince myself I was imagining things. My job made me cautious by nature. Consulting was about analyzing details, spotting gaps in systems, predicting weaknesses. Maybe I was projecting that onto my marriage, looking for problems where there were none. But deep down, something didn't sit right. Nights at home in Charlotte grew quieter. I'd lie in bed, the glow of the street lamps on Queens Road bleeding through the blinds, listening to the soft hum of the city. More often than not, her side of the bed was empty. Even when she was home, I'd wake at 2 a.m. and reach out, finding only cool sheets. She'd come back hours later with some excuse about emails or late-night strategy calls. Doubt has a voice. It doesn't scream. It whispers. It leans close when the room is dark and asks a simple question. Are you sure you know her? For the first time in years, I didn't have an answer. Suspicion turns you into an archivist. You start filing away moments you would have shrugged off a month earlier, labeling them with dates and times like you're building a case against a stranger who happens to sleep in your house. That's what I became, quiet, methodical, the calm version of myself that shows up on tough consulting gigs. Only the system I was auditing was my marriage. The first artifact was paper. I was looking for a dog walker coupon in the kitchen junk drawer and found a thin stack of envelopes rubber-banded together. Claire's name, but not our address. A forwarding label to a townhouse on Franklin Road in Brentwood, Tennessee, suburban Nashville. The postmark was recent. Inside, a dentist reminder, a pharmacy mailer, and a glossy flyer for a neighborhood block party at Crockett Park. She'd told me she hated Nashville. Too country. I slid the band back on and stared at the drawer like it might tell me I was overreacting. Next came numbers. Our joint checking at Truist had always been boring. Mortgage, utilities, groceries, the routine hum of a shared life. Now, tucked between Harris Teeter runs and Duke Energy, there were monthly transfers to something called Hearthstone Properties LLC, TN. Same amount, like rent. Another line item kept appearing too. Charges at Biscuit Love in the Gulch and a parking garage on 5th plus Broadway, both in Nashville. On nights she swore she was in Atlanta. I told myself conferences move, that companies book regional events across cities. Then I looked at the timestamps, Saturday mornings, not conferences. Her phone, once a casual fixture on the counter, evolved into an animal she kept close. Face ID disappeared in favor of a passcode she'd tilt away from me. If I reached for it to snap a photo of Rocky belly up on the kitchen floor, she'd glide in and say, "Light as air, I've got it." The smile never reached her eyes. One afternoon, I picked it up to silence an alarm and watched her shoulders tense before she even turned around. I set it down like it burned. That's when doubt stopped being theoretical. It had a posture. There were travel twins, duplicate shampoos, 2 makeup kits, a second set of chargers labeled with a piece of blue tape that read ATL. In her car's glove box, beneath registration and napkins, I found a folded receipt from Edley's Barbecue in 12 South, signed with her looping C. Thompson. She'd told me that weekend she crashed in Denver after a delayed flight. I wanted to believe delays. I'd lived half my life in airports where the clocks mean nothing. But the barbecue stain on the receipt felt like a fingerprint I couldn't wipe off. Phone records sealed the pattern. Late-night calls to a 615 number, Nashville, stretching 40, 60 minutes. Always followed by the same quiet mood the next morning, the kind that makes breakfast taste like cardboard. When I asked how Atlanta had been, she'd say productive and kiss my cheek, her hand already reaching for her suitcase. On a Wednesday, I found a small key fob on her key ring that didn't match anything we owned. A month later, I'd recognized the logo as a private fitness studio in Brentwood. Through it all, I tried to be fair. People travel. People have reasons. I kept hearing my better angels whisper, "Don't turn love into a spreadsheet." But love, when it's cracking, begs for proof. So I opened a notes file on my laptop and called it Claire Anomalies, a bland name for a list that felt like sand collecting in my shoes. Dates, places, receipts, the way she flinched when I said Nashville out loud. I didn't accuse. I observed. Hannah from my team noticed me drifting. We were grabbing coffee near the office on South Tryon when she mentioned, too casually, that she'd seen Claire at Charlotte Douglas on a Friday, boarding a flight to BNA, not ATL. Probably a connection, I said, the lie tasting polite and poisonous at the same time. Hannah gave me a look that said she understood more than I wanted her to. At night, I lay in our Myers Park bedroom, listening to cicadas grind under the windows, Rocky's quiet breathing at the foot of the bed. In the dark, the mind runs reels you can't stop. A townhouse in Brentwood. Regular transfers. The way she guarded that small glowing screen like it contained her heartbeat. Could she be hiding something? The question stopped sounding paranoid and started sounding practical. I didn't know what the truth was yet, but for the first time, I was ready to find out. Life rarely gives you warning before it breaks. There's no flashing red sign, no slow build of thunder. One moment you're thinking about client meetings and PowerPoint slides, and the next, the world tilts in a way you can never set straight again. For me, it happened in Nashville. I'd flown in for a 3-day project with a finance firm just off Broadway. It was the usual grind: flight delays, a rental car that smelled faintly of cigarettes, a hotel reservation at the Omni downtown. But instead of heading straight to the office, I found myself drifting south on I-65 toward Brentwood. I don't even know why. Call it instinct, call it a tug in the chest, I couldn't explain. Brentwood is the kind of suburb that looks lifted out of a real estate brochure. Wide streets lined with sycamores, tidy lawns, houses with white porches and flagpoles. It smelled faintly of cut grass and grill smoke, the kind of neighborhood where kids ride scooters until dusk. I slowed the car at a corner, trying to shake off the unease building in my gut, and that's when I saw her. Claire. She was standing in the driveway of a 2-story brick house, sunlight spilling across her hair like a halo. She wore jeans, a light sweater, casual in a way that seemed so familiar, so intimate. I felt my stomach drop. And she wasn't alone. A man stood beside her, tall, relaxed, his hand brushing against hers with the ease of habit. And then the little girl appeared. No more than 3, clutching a stuffed rabbit with one ear bent sideways. She ran across the yard, voice high and sweet, calling out a word that split me open. Mommy. Claire bent down, scooping her up, pressing a kiss to the child's cheek. Her smile lit up her face, the same smile I thought was mine, the one I'd seen at our wedding, in candlelight dinners, on lazy Sunday mornings with Rocky curled at our feet. But now, here it was, shining in a world I never knew existed. The man leaned closer, resting his hand on the small of her back, and Claire tilted toward him like they were the only 2 people on earth. He kissed her, soft, unhurried, while the little girl laughed in her arms. A family portrait in motion, complete, effortless, devastating. I sat frozen behind the wheel, engine humming, my hands locked tight at 10 and 2. My heart wasn't racing. It was sinking, heavy as lead, into some place I didn't know existed inside me. The air through the cracked window smelled of fresh mulch and barbecue. Sounds of children playing echoed faintly from down the block. It was so painfully ordinary, so domestic, that it felt like mockery. For a wild second, I told myself it had to be a mistake. Maybe I'd stumbled on her twin, some cruel coincidence. But then she laughed, that exact laugh I knew better than my own heartbeat, the laugh that had carried me through every lonely hotel night. There was no mistaking it. This was Claire. My Claire. I wanted to drive away, but I couldn't. My eyes were locked on the scene in front of me, her tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, the child clinging to her shoulder, the man lifting a grocery bag from the trunk as if they'd done this routine 1,000 times. It was a home, a family, and I was nowhere in it. Finally, terrified she might turn and see me watching, I forced my foot onto the gas. The car rolled forward, slow at first, then faster, until the house disappeared in the rearview mirror. My knuckles were white against the steering wheel, breath ragged in my chest. The bright Nashville evening blurred past, traffic lights smearing into streaks of red and green. But nothing I passed mattered. Not the skyline glowing in the distance, not the neon promise of Broadway, not the steady hum of the interstate. All I could see, all I will ever see, was Claire smiling that smile, but not at me. That was the moment my marriage ended, though it would take time for the pieces to catch up. Because in that driveway, under that Tennessee sun, I realized I wasn't a husband. I was a shadow. After Nashville, silence became unbearable. Every time Claire laughed, every time she touched my arm in the kitchen, I saw the driveway in Brentwood. I saw the child calling her mommy. And the more I tried to bury the image, the sharper it became. I knew I couldn't confront her with just emotion. She'd deny, twist, explain away. If I wanted truth, I needed evidence. So I turned into someone I didn't recognize, part husband, part detective. My days looked the same to her. Meetings, coffee, the quiet hum of my consulting life. But at night, when the house went still and Rocky curled at my feet, I became a hunter. The phone came first. Claire guarded it now, but old habits slip. I watched her fingers enter the code one night, memorized the pattern, and later unlocked it while she showered. Most messages were harmless, co-workers, family, friends. But tucked inside a folder labeled projects, too bland, too careful, I found group chats. Names I didn't know, and one that made my pulse stop, Mark Reynolds. Thread after thread, casual words that didn't belong to a colleague. Photos of a little girl with blonde curls, birthday candles glowing in front of her. My chest tightened. It was her, the child from Brentwood. I backed out, locked the screen, placed the phone exactly where she'd left it. But my hands shook as if I'd touched fire. The bank statements came next. Midnight, downstairs, laptop balanced on my knees. Transfers to Hearthstone Properties LLC, regular as clockwork, all routed to Tennessee. Venmo payments labeled utilities, groceries, soccer fees. She wasn't sneaking away for stolen weekends. She was paying bills, supporting a life I had no part in. Social media was the deepest cut. I built a fake profile, added a few colleagues, followed links through friends of friends. That's where I found the photos. Claire at a barbecue in a Nashville backyard, arm around Mark, the little girl clutching her leg. Claire laughing with neighbors on folding chairs, paper plates piled with food. The captions read, "Family night," and "so blessed." Words she never used with me. I stared at those images until my vision blurred. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was her happiness. She looked lighter there, freer, as if she'd stepped into the life she truly wanted. That was the knife that twisted deepest, realizing I might have been the shadow version, the life she tolerated. Nights became endless. I'd sit in the dark, Rocky's breathing steady at my side, scrolling through evidence like an addict. My eyes burned, my chest hollow, the quiet of the house pressing in on me. Every creak in the floorboards sounded like a lie. Every smile from Claire felt rehearsed. One evening, unable to stand it, I asked Hannah, my colleague, my friend, about Claire's constant Atlanta trips. Hannah hesitated, stirred her coffee, then admitted she'd once seen Claire boarding a flight to Nashville. Maybe a connection, I muttered, the lie sour in my throat. But we both knew connections didn't explain birthday photos or utility bills. By the end, my notes file was pages long. Dates, receipts, phone records, screenshots of her second world. A map of betrayal so thorough even I couldn't deny it anymore. But what haunted me most wasn't the evidence. It was the question that sat at the bottom of every page. If she could live two lives so completely, which one was real? And if she could smile at me while building a home somewhere else, then who exactly had I married? It had to happen. You can't live with a volcano inside your chest forever without letting it erupt. For weeks, I'd collected proof, receipts, bank transfers, photos that cut deeper than knives. And every night, I rehearsed what I would say. I promised myself I'd be calm, measured, logical. But when the moment came, logic dissolved like smoke. It was a Sunday evening in Charlotte. Claire had just returned from another conference, suitcase rolling across the hardwood. Rocky wagged his tail like nothing was wrong. She smiled at me, that polished, practiced smile. And for the first time, I saw it for what it was, a mask. I couldn't hold it anymore. I saw you. The words came out low, steady, almost unrecognizable in my own voice. Her head tilted, confusion flickering in her eyes. Nashville, I continued, my throat tightening. I saw the house. I saw him. I saw the little girl. The color drained from her face. Her hand froze on the suitcase handle, knuckles white. Ethan, she started, voice soft, pleading. It's not what you think. It's business. It's complicated, you. No. My voice cracked, louder now, filling the room, bouncing off the walls of the home we'd built together. Rocky whimpered and backed into the corner. My chest burned, my hands trembling as I took a step closer. Don't you dare tell me it's business. I saw you kiss him. I saw you hold her. I know everything. Her eyes filled with tears, but not the kind that come from love, the kind that come from being cornered. She reached out, as if touching me might erase the truth. Ethan, please, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. My voice was a blade. While I was out killing myself on the road, believing in us, you were building another life. Another family. You looked me in the eye and told me I was your world, all while you were someone else's. She broke then, collapsing onto the couch, sobbing into her hands. But I couldn't find sympathy. Not anymore. Watching her cry felt like watching a stranger, someone I used to know, someone who'd already died the moment I saw that driveway in Brentwood. The silence that followed was unbearable. The only sound was her ragged breathing, the clock ticking above the mantel, and the pounding of my own heart. I wanted to smash something, to shatter every picture frame, every memory we'd built. Instead, I just stood there, shaking, drowning in the wreckage of a life I thought was real. And in that moment, I realized, there's no pain like seeing the person you trusted most unravel into someone you never really knew. The night after our confrontation, the house felt poisoned. Every word she spoke dripped with a desperate kind of sweetness, the tone of someone trying to weave a new lie over the torn fabric of the old ones. She followed me from room to room, her eyes red, her hands trembling just enough to look fragile. Ethan, you have to believe me, she whispered. You don't understand how lonely I was. You were gone all the time, always on planes, always working. I didn't mean for this to happen. I never wanted to hurt you. The words stung because they weren't apologies. They were excuses. Subtle, practiced excuses that painted her as the victim. The woman who had no choice, who just fell into something she couldn't control. She cried into my chest, begging me not to give up on her, telling me we could start over, as if betrayal could be reset like a calendar reminder. For a moment, I almost let her words wrap around me. Almost. But then I saw the driveway again. The kiss. The child's laugh. The look of pure belonging she'd worn on her face. And I knew. This wasn't about loneliness. This was about choice. So, while she slept upstairs, I made my own choice. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop glowing in the dark and typed his name, Mark Reynolds. His number was already etched into my mind from her phone records. My hands shook as I pressed call. He answered groggily, voice thick from sleep. Hello. I swallowed hard. Mark, my name is Ethan Miller. I think we need to talk about Claire. There was a silence so long I thought the line had dropped. Then a sharp intake of breath. Claire? My wife, Claire? The world tilted again. Wife. I told him what I'd seen. The trips, the receipts, the photos. My voice cracked, but I forced every word out, each syllable a blade. On the other end, I could hear him pacing, muttering, cursing under his breath. He didn't deny it. He didn't even sound shocked. He just sounded broken. When he finally spoke, his words hit harder than any blow. We've been together for years. We have a daughter. And she told me you were the ex-husband who couldn't let go. The air left my lungs. Every lie she'd fed me, she'd spun into a different story for him. Two parallel lives, both built on deceit, stitched together with just enough distance to keep the seams from tearing. Until now. We spoke for nearly an hour, exchanging pieces of a puzzle neither of us wanted to see completed. By the time the call ended, there was no room left for doubt. Claire hadn't been mine in years. She hadn't been his, either. She'd been living for herself, feeding off the devotion of two men who thought they were her only world. When I finally closed the laptop, the kitchen was bathed in the gray light of dawn. Upstairs, I could hear Claire stirring, preparing to start another day of pretending. But for me, the pretending was over. The truth was no longer a whisper in the dark. It was a spotlight, blinding, undeniable, and it had exposed everything. When truth finally comes into daylight, it doesn't trickle, it crashes. The morning after I spoke to Mark, everything began to unravel. Word spread fast, not through gossip, but through the undeniable weight of proof. Screenshots, receipts, bank transfers, photographs, all lined up like ammunition. I didn't scream or throw things. I didn't need to. The evidence spoke louder than rage ever could. Mark confronted her first. He called while she was in the kitchen, and I stood in the doorway, listening to her face crumble as his voice roared through the speaker. He demanded answers, begged for honesty, and for once, she had nothing to give. Just silence. Silence, and then sobs that sounded hollow, like even she no longer believed her own excuses. Later that day, I sat across from her at the dining table, a stack of printouts between us. She tried again to twist the story. She had been confused. She had been lost. She had never stopped loving me. But her words were meaningless against the cold ink of proof. For every plea, I slid another page across the table. Nashville receipts, airline tickets, photos of her holding Lily with the caption Family Day. By the end, her tears had dried, replaced with a look I hadn't seen before, fear. And it wasn't just Mark and me. Friends who once admired us, who toasted to our perfect marriage, now stared at the truth laid bare. Hannah from work, who had suspected something, shook her head with a mix of anger and pity. Even her colleagues, the ones she'd fooled with stories of business trips, began to distance themselves. The polished image Claire had built cracked in every direction. Her second life collapsed first. Mark cut her off, furious, wounded, refusing to let her spin more lies. The trust he had built with her, the family he thought was real, shattered. He swore to protect Lily from her chaos. And for the first time, Claire faced a door closing in her face she couldn't charm her way back through. And then her world with me followed. I told her I was done, not with shouting, but with quiet finality. I showed her the papers, the photos, the timeline of years stolen from my life. And when I stood, Rocky padding close behind me, she didn't beg me to stay. She just sat there, shoulders slumped, surrounded by fragments of a life she had destroyed with her own hands. It was a strange kind of justice, watching both of her worlds collapse, not because I screamed, not because I sought revenge, but because lies can't stand forever when truth finally shines. And yet, there was no triumph in it for me, only the dull ache of loss. Because even though she deserved every consequence, I had still loved her. And loving a ghost, I discovered, leaves scars that proof can't erase. I once thought love was a fortress, that if you built it carefully enough, with patience, laughter, shared mornings, and whispered promises, nothing could break through. But standing there, in the ashes of what I'd call the marriage, I finally understood love is no fortress. It's glass, beautiful, fragile, and when it shatters, you don't just lose the shape of it. You bleed on the shards. The night I left was the quietest night of my life. Claire sat at the dining table, head in her hands, surrounded by the wreckage of her lies. Receipts, photos, messages, the pieces of her double life laid bare under the harsh light of truth. She didn't speak as I pulled my suitcase down the stairs. She didn't beg, didn't plead. Maybe because she knew words couldn't bridge the canyon she had carved. Maybe because she had finally run out of lies. Rocky padded beside me, his nails clicking softly on the hardwood floor. He looked back once at her, then pressed against my leg as if to say, "It's you and me now." In that moment, I realized he was more loyal than the woman I had built my life around. And loyalty, I decided, was the only thing worth carrying forward. I paused at the door, my hand on the knob, the house breathing around me one last time. The walls still held echoes of laughter, the scent of Sunday breakfasts, the illusion of a family that never truly existed. I had loved that illusion, and now I was leaving it behind, like walking away from a grave. Outside, Charlotte's air was cool, tinged with the sweetness of pine and the distant hum of cicadas. I stood in the driveway, staring at the windows glowing faintly with the last traces of our life together. For years, I thought this place was my future. Now it was nothing but a stage set, the backdrop of a story written in lies. When I finally turned, suitcase in hand, Rocky at my side, I didn't look back. The sound of the door closing behind me was more final than any vow I'd ever spoken. Driving away, the city lights stretched ahead like constellations, each one a reminder that the world was still vast, still open, still waiting. And here's what I want you to take from my story. Trust is the most fragile currency we have. You think it's solid until one day it slips through your fingers, and you're left wondering if the person you loved ever truly existed. Sometimes the bed you share is colder than you realize. Sometimes the smile you treasure is being given to someone else. But betrayal isn't the end. It's the beginning of clarity. It strips away illusions, forces you to stand naked with the truth. And as painful as that is, it's also freeing. I realized I'd been living with a stranger. And in losing her, I found myself again. So if you ever find yourself holding broken glass where love used to be, don't curse the shards. Use them to cut ties, to carve your way forward. Because on the other side of loss is something stronger than any illusion, the unshakable peace of knowing who you are. And as I walked into the night, Rocky's steady pace beside me, I felt that peace rising. Not triumph, not revenge, just the quiet power of survival. And sometimes, that is the greatest victory of all.